power gaming dungeon masters, fail roleplay, and horny degenerate players. Yep, it's that time of week once again, D&D Horror Story time. Hello everyone, I'm Finn, welcome back to FinFilms. Join me today as we once again step into the hilarious world of Dungeons & Dragons Horror Stories. This week's stories featuring a degen horny player, a power-tripping dungeon master, and a former member of Critical Role? Ah yes, the bipolar nature of Dungeons & Dragons. Still to this day, I may never get over just how many D&D horror stories are out there today, a large part of this being the fact of just how big Dungeons & Dragons has gotten in the modern post-5e age. It's really unfortunate, man, because Dungeons & Dragons, tabletop role-playing games are such like an important part of my life, such an awesome part of my life. I've met so many awesome, great people. I've had so many awesome, great experiences, and all of these horror stories that we're discussing today are just a drop in the bucket of what some people experience with their Dungeons & Dragons or tabletop RPGs. This really does make me sad because the amount of people out there who will probably never play a tabletop RPG again because of one or two bad experiences that they've had in said game, whether it be D&D, Pathfinder, what have you, it just makes me fucking sad, man. And honestly, I don't really blame them. It just takes one real bad experience, especially if you are new to tabletop role-playing games, to basically put you off from playing these games ever again, because you probably think that every single experience is like this. Two of our stories this week come from the D&D Horror Stories subreddit. If you'd like to submit your own tabletop role-playing game horror story to maybe be featured in one of these videos, then please hit me up in my email down below. As I said, our first two stories that we are covering come from the D&D Horror Stories subreddit, the final story coming from Critical Role, the biggest Dungeons & Dragons show itself, with its former player, Orion Acaba. However, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves right now. Our first story, as I said, coming from the D&D Horror Stories subreddit, coming from the user, brace yourself for this one, guys, user Horse Brothel ILLC. The post titled, "Am I the asshole for not letting my Dungeons & Dragons players run a horse brothel? I dungeon master for a party of 9. Jesus, that's a big party. So when my party's druid came up with an idea to get them some easy coin, I was caught a little off guard. My party just made it to one of the largest cities in my homebrew world. Think something like Waterdeep. The druid asked me, since there are a lot of people in this city, would the market for people who are interested in a brothel service be bigger? Naturally, I said yes, assuming he planned on going to a brothel. He instead offered to work in a brothel for a day, assuring the owner maximum profit. With a high charisma roll, the owner agreed and gave the druid a room. The druid then revealed his hand. The whole time, he planned on using conjure animals in combination with wild shape to summon a militia of horses with the sole purpose of pleasuring the freaks of the city. Oh, what? This shook me to my core. After almost an hour arguing with players who all jumped on the bandwagon against me, my druid told me he was putting his hoof down, and I was ruining his fun. He said if I didn't let him get that bag, he would permanently leave the campaign. Still, I refused and he stormed out of the room and later blocked my phone number, ending a 6-year friendship. Am I the asshole? Jesus Christ, man, what is it with Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop role-playing nerds being such horny, degenerate bastards? Of course, there's nothing wrong with a little horny, hilarious shenanigans at your Dungeons & Dragons table, but come on, man, quitting your game, blocking your friend's phone number, and never speaking them again because of something that didn't go your way in D&D, especially something like a f***ing horse brothel, well, that's just, maybe a little bit extreme.
Stop it. Get some help.
What's even crazier to me is the fact that these people played IRL in person. This sounds like a type of experience that would come straight out of a Discord D&D session if I've ever heard it, with a group of people who've never met each other in real life. But the fact that this happened in person with a group of people who he considered his friends, a person that, according to the post, he said he knew for 6 years, is fucking mind-boggling. I mean, you know what they say, man, conjure animals do be a dungeon master's least favorite spell. And I can see why when we're having ourselves a bit of a equine party. It's funny because this type of behavior a little bit is going to come back into this video when we discuss Orion Acaba later in the video, but there are so many people out there who play Dungeons & Dragons like this, people who just, I guess for whatever reason, think it's their way or the highway when it comes to roleplay. Their roleplay is either valid, and if you don't think it's valid, then, well, it's table flipping time. I've encountered plenty of people like this in my long tabletop career. I've encountered plenty of people who also make a bunch of degenerate, horny jokes. Most of them are funny, and don't get me wrong, this idea is fucking hilarious, but throwing a temper tantrum just because your dungeon master turns it down, because let me, newsflash here, guys, your DM does not have to indulge you in your weird horse fetish. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. Ending a 6-year friendship over something like this is one of the most, unhinged things I've ever heard of in my life, and all honesty, probably good riddance. But hey, who knows, maybe this guy finally got his bag and living out his fantasy of a horse brothel RP in some other random D&D game. Our next story comes from Reddit user Ashen Dark. The post titled, "First Dungeons & Dragon Campaign, and it went horrible." For some context, this is a Dungeons & Dragons campaign that's completely over Discord text, so keep that in mind. DM, okay, you take 8 damage. Player, bro, I have 3 HP now. Man, I'm dead. The world around you begins to swirl, and thousands of bug-like creatures swarm down from the halls. Well, I have no response. I'm one-shot. The creatures get closer and drop down into your skin, but they don't attack. My character runs out of the cell, locking it, and no, I'm not joking, my max HP is 11. You appear to be safe inside the cell as the creatures disappear. You hear a voice whispering nearby, but you can't identify where it's coming from. The whispers are incomprehensible. I'll take the journal and quietly keep searching for an exit, going back down to the original corridor. As you continue searching, you notice that the corridor is pitch black. There seems to be no entrance or exit, and you feel something digging into the back of your head. What is your intelligence stat? I'll grab the thing that's digging into my head. My intelligence is 15. You attempt to grab it, but feel nothing, only the sensation of something burrowing into your skull. Update, your intelligence is now 12. Great, stat drains. This campaign is going to be fun. I'll walk away into a direction I didn't yet go in. As you walk away, you feel the sensation again, and your muscles stop working. You drop to the floor. Strength drain now? Update your intelligence to 10. Sad face. Unable to move, you begin to see large, fleshy monsters coming towards you. You can feel your muscles failing and your body locking up as the creatures get closer. I'll attempt to get up, even though I know I probably won't be able to. You fail to get up and the creature gets closer. Update your int to 7. Unable to stop yourself, you begin to scream at the top of your lungs. I already lost, XD. Update your int to 5. Unable to stop yourself, you've been carving your skull open, screaming in pain and terror. I'm already dead then, because I only had 3 HP. Peace. Player leaves the group. Player is re-added to the group. You're not quite dead yet. Update your int to 3. With one final stroke, you carve your skull clean open and begin to bleed out, paralyzed in horrific pain, swarmed by rot bugs. I left the campaign and am never playing with said dungeon master ever again. Jesus Christ, bro, what the f*** happened in this D&D session? This man literally went from 15 int to 3 in 5 minutes. I don't think that there's even an intellect devourer can do that in, Dungeons & Dragons rules as written. What the fuck was going on here? This is what I'm talking about. This is an example of someone who, for the very first time, wanted to play Dungeons & Dragons. They probably heard what all the hype was. They probably heard from their friends how much fun it is, and then they go and play. One, not even playing in voice, playing over text, which is fine. I mean, I used to play MUDs back in the day. Text RP can be fun. But then you end up with something like this. And I probably, if I was this person, would never want to play Dungeons & Dragons ever again. As well, the Dungeon Master didn't even have their player roll a single saving throw or give them any chance at all to maybe not let their intellect get absolutely devoured and reduced permanently. Again, I feel so bad for this guy, man. This is nothing new in the tabletop D&D Horror Story world. The amount of players who have had bad experiences with dungeon masters or with other players, just bad experiences with D&D in general, and then never play again is so freaking sad to me, especially because, you know, plenty of people out there like me and plenty of people who watch these videos have had absolutely amazing experiences in Dungeons and Dragons. Some of my favorite memories, some of my friends have come in Dungeons and Dragons. Getting to experience a good D&D campaign with a fun group of players that you genuinely enjoy role-playing with an awesome story, with a great DM, is just such an awesome sensation. It's such a satisfying, like, fulfilling role-playing storytelling experience. I can't even really put it into words. Sadly, though, this seems pretty rare for most players out there, and I hate that most players seemingly will end up with some kind of a horror story before they will actually get an awesome campaign story like that. Now for our final D&D story, the title story for today's video, the story of Orion Acaba, aka Tiberius Stormwind, the long-forgotten Critical Role member. It's actually hilarious to me because I'm sure there's a subsection of the Critical Role fanbase, the newer Critical Role fanbase, maybe that have only watched campaigns 2 and 3 and didn't watch the very early days of Critical Role, that probably had no idea that there was actually another permanent member of the Critical Role players. But he didn't last very long. For a little bit of context, Orion Acaba was one of the original cast members of Critical Role, as Critical Role was originally a D&D home game that took place with Dungeon Master Matt Mercer for many years before it was ever streamed on Geek and Sundry way back in, like, what, 2014, 2015? Orion, though, was a classic case of a problematic player. I mean, he really ticks all of the boxes when it comes to what a problematic player does. I'm talking main character syndrome, metagaming, fudging dice rolls, straight up cheating, as well as, some rather horny, awkward roleplay scenarios. Orion lasted a total of 27 episodes in the first campaign of Critical Role. There was numerous reasons why probably Orion was kicked from the game, many of them having to do with in-game shenanigans that the players had finally grown tired of, as well as a few out-of-character, out-of-game events. I believe there was an incident of him trying to sue some person who was selling Critical Role merchandise online or something like that. There's a variety of reasons why, but today we're just going to focus on a few of the events from in Campaign 1 that ultimately led to Orion getting kicked from the game. Do note that there are minor spoilers for Critical Role Campaign 1 in this section of the video, so keep that in mind. We begin with one of the first iconic kind of Orion f***up moments that I can remember from Critical Role Campaign 1, the great fight with the Beholder in the climax of the Craghammer arc. For context, the party had delved into the depths of the Underdark to rescue a Lady Kima paladin of Ord, eventually rescuing this paladin and facing off against a horde of Illithids led by a crazy Beholder. As the party are going to face said Beholder, Orion's character, the sorcerer Tiberius Stormwind, decided to recuse himself from the fight. Orion blatantly metagaming the stat block and the effects of the Beholder, most notably the anti-magic eye, which is kind of the Beholder's, besides the eye stalks, main feature, its main trait. Orion, realizing that his character would be hard handicapped in this fight, decided that Tiberius wasn't going to take part in the attempted battle against the Beholder. Orion later saying that his view of Dungeons and Dragons was an antagonistic nature between the DM and the players, something that just shouldn't ever be the case in an actual Dungeons and Dragons game. What happened then post-Beholder fight was an RP standoff between Sam Riegel's character Scanlan and Orion's character Tiberius.
If I may, if I may, very quickly, are you with us, Tiberius?
We will discuss that when we get out of here.
Because you disappeared for the whole fight. Are you with us?
I am with you, and I'm trying to get out of
Are
here.
you going to disappear again?
To be fair, Scanlan, I never disappeared to begin with.
Well, you weren't there when we needed you the most. You were out doing God knows what.
Quite the contrary. If it wasn't for me, you'd still be fighting that damn thing.
What on earth are you talking about?
Silence.
Dispel magic. Yes, I do.
Alright, counterspell.
Do I have a will save?
No, you're done.
That low enough level? No, unfortunately.
I remember remember watching this episode live at the time and it being a little bit weird. You can kind of tell from the looks on the cast's face that all of them felt a little bit awkward from this scenario, and that very pertinent "no, you're done, you're quiet," which by Orion, which ended this interaction, was a bit strange. But in hindsight, knowing everything that Orion was doing behind the scenes and all of the cheating, metagaming, and just strange main character syndrome behavior that was going on, we can really see how this was the kind of first initial problematic behavior. But with hindsight, it was probably way more problematic than we even realized at the time. I mean, Orion telling Sam to back off was very much not in character. That very much felt like not Tiberius telling Scanlan to back off, but Orion telling Sam to back off, as he was obviously a little bit peeved that Sam was calling him out for basically abandoning his party in easily the hardest fight that the Critical Role team had faced in the campaign up until this point, as this fight could have easily gone horribly wrong and led to deaths of characters. And where was Orion's character? Nowhere to be found. Again, this comes back to his view on what Dungeons & Dragons was at the time. Orion not only metagaming the fact that he knew everything about the Beholder and the Beholder's stat block, which is pretty obvious metagaming, as normally, you know, in character you'd need to make a check to try to determine if your character has any prior knowledge of said information. At least that's what you should do, and not just blatantly metagame what the enemy that you're facing's abilities and stat block is. But again, Orion has this view of Dungeons & Dragons as being an adversarial one between Dungeon Master and player, and this is not how Dungeons & Dragons, in my opinion, should be played. This is a story, a collaborative story between players and Dungeon Master, with the Dungeon Master presenting challenges for the players to overcome. Yes, sometimes these challenges can be extremely difficult. Sometimes they can result in player death. But a Dungeon Master, in my opinion, should not be out to kill their players unless that is the type of game that you are running and was expressively said before you even started playing. You should challenge your players as a Dungeon Master. It's okay to kill your players as a Dungeon Master, but this adversarial relationship is, again, in my opinion, not how Dungeons & Dragons should be played, and it can lead to, well, situations like this, where we're treating Dungeons & Dragons as a video game to be won, not as a collaborative role-playing storytelling experience. Our next instance of Orion's D&D horror story behavior comes from a kind of mini Slayer's Take arc that happened after the Underdark arc, Orion and his group facing off against a Rakshasa. This was kind of the first instance where I think people started to realize that Orion was doing a little bit of cheating. This interaction first kind of begins with Orion blowing all of his spell slots in a random fight before even the main encounter with a Rakshasa, and then asking the party if they can have a long rest so he can regain his spell spots back, when they explicitly told him beforehand to manage his resources.
Why did you burn all of your sorcery points? We told you not to burn all of your sorcery points. We don't have time to sit here and take full rest.
I can still cure everybody, you know. I can heal everybody if you need the wounds.
So, for those who use your hit dice to heal yourself, you commence in the meal, and it is
Neither do I.
a very delightful meal. It is
I mean,
tasty.
you can ask the group.
The fight with the Rakshasa itself was an absolute clusterfuck, and was really the first time that I remember thinking, like, man, Orion, I think, is consistently cheating here, as Orion was using an item that stored a 4th level spell slot, or up to 4 levels of a spell slot. So either 1 4-level spell slots, 4 level 1 spell slots, you get the idea. The way that Orion was using it, though, was to store 4 4th level spell slots.
And it begins to
Tiberius.
4th level counter spell.
Tiberius!
Okay, so you already used 1 4th level counter spell from your ring earlier.
Yeah, and I have 2 stored in there.
I have 2
Actually-
4th level counter spells in a ring that can carry 1 up to 4th levels of a spell.
No, I can carry 5 up to 4th level spells. It's my ring of store spell items. I can carry up to 5 spells that can go up to 4th level.
No, that's not how it works.
You can carry up to 4 levels of spells.
I don't understand.
You can do 4 level 1 spells, you can do 1 level 4 spell, you can do 2 level 2 spells.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
1 4.
You can do a level
That's how it's
3
always worked.
spell. Yeah, that's how my ring works as well. It's a level 5 Ring of Storm.
Welcome to Dungeons and Dragons.
It's blatantly obvious Matt's kind of frustration here, having to stop the fight mid-fight to explain how this item actually works to Orion. And this was really the first time that I think the fan base realized that Orion, not only was he using items explicitly wrong for his own advantage, but was also fudging dice rolls.
Okay. Go for it. So go ahead and roll for the attack on each of them. Since it was forced out, it is not in melee with you because it is far enough away, so you just straight roll for these.
What is that? Plus my spell attack. Okay, so what was that? So that's
From episodes after this point, it became extremely obvious that everyone was well aware at the table that Orion was doing this. Marisha and Taliesin being tasked with babysitting Orion's roles. And you can see this if you watch closely from all of the episodes kind of post this point, that Taliesin and Marisha are blatantly, very obviously babysitting Orion's roles to make sure he's not fudging numbers or re-rolling dice when he shouldn't be. This as well was later confirmed by Matt Mercer himself in a now deleted comment on a Reddit thread, I believe, where Matt said, and I quote, "The only player who fudged rolls is no longer part of the show." Again, this goes back to kind of how Orion views Dungeons and Dragons. He plays the game like it's a video game, not a collaborative storytelling experience. He doesn't play Dungeons and Dragons like a play, like an improv play where dice and rules just happen to be involved. No, he plays it like a video game, a must-win competitive video game at all costs. And you know what they say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Our final D&D horror story moment from Orion that I'm covering in this video, but let me tell ya, there are so many others that we could have easily covered, maybe in the future we will cover them, comes in Orion's final episode, and might be one of the most iconic, or maybe I should say infamous moments of Orion being a walk-in D&D horror story. This moment comes at the beginning of the Briarwood arc, post the events at Uriel's castle and the first face-off with the Briarwoods, the party discussing on what they should do and how they should take on the Briarwoods.
As Vex is saying this, as Vex is saying this, Tiberius is getting a half chub.
A what?
Hey.
Well, that's just weird.
You can't see it because it's inside.
Yes, because you said it out loud. So.
Anyway.
I'm just saying, strategy.
Fair enough.
Strategy.
Oh, a strategy chub. All right.
Strategy chub.
Strategy chub, okay.
Come on.
Jesus Christ, man, even watching this interaction to this day makes me f***ing cringe. It's one thing to joke around and have fun with your friends and make like weird, lewd comments if that's the type of relationship that you have, but to do so live on a Dungeons and Dragons show to a married woman of all people when her husband is sitting right there at the table is mental. Look at Travis's face right now. That is the face of a man who is about to absolutely snap. This is a man who casually snapped a mechanical pencil in half, an absolute behemoth giga chad of a Dungeons and Dragons player, and you're making those comments about his wife. Mind-blowing. Again, these are just a few of many, many moments of D&D horror story goodness that Orion provided us on Critical Role for his 27 episodes involved. I can only imagine the things that he was doing in the home game of Critical Role before the game was actually streamed. I wonder if people didn't catch on to it back then because it was just a home game, but now that they had a live audience of thousands and thousands of people, all eyes were on them, and the fan base quickly realized what was going on here. And it was extremely apparent, especially by this point, that the cast were very much fed up and done with Orion. Now, as funny as these things are, and as awkward as these scenarios are, I'm not trying to shit on this guy. I mean, he's been tread on enough on the internet post these moments, so much so that most people, a lot of, like I said, new fans to Critical Role, didn't even know that he was a former cast member on Critical Role. The guy's been through enough, and he has enough personal issues in his life, especially at this time, so we can give him a bit of a benefit of the doubt. What I highlight these for is, one, they're fucking hilarious, and two, these are good learning moments for potentially new Dungeons & Dragons players or just experienced Dungeons & Dragons player. These are the type of pitfalls that people can fall into to make them a classic example of a D&D horror story type player. I think a lot of people can easily fall into maybe some of these pitfalls and don't even realize it at the time, especially if you are someone who's played a lot of video games. It's very easy to treat Dungeons & Dragons like a video game, not the collaborative storytelling experience that it actually is. And these are the types of behaviors that will basically lead to classic D&D horror story scenarios. This main protagonist, main character syndrome type player, as well as just making weird sexual comments about a married woman at a table with her husband sitting right there. A husband who's an absolute giga chad of a man who could probably snap you in half. And yes, this was another classic episode of D&D Horror Stories. Let me know in the comment section down below your D&D horror stories, and if you'd like to see me cover more of Orion's D&D horror story moments in a future video. There's been plenty of videos covering Orion in totality. I'm thinking of the What Happened to Tiberius video, a classic video that covers most of what happened with Orion on Critical Role. So I definitely recommend you guys go checking that video out if you have not already. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching and continuing to support me. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to help support me and to put this video into the algorithm. If you did enjoy this video and you want to see other D&D horror story content or other D&D content, then please click one of the videos on screen now. As always, guys, thank you so much again for watching my videos. I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there, drink your water, hug your mother. Until next time, peace, love, adu.